I'm so grateful to Deanna for that incredibly beautiful introduction. Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here generally, and to be... Is there feedback? Oh, maybe because I touched it. I shouldn't have touched it.
I don't know anything about these things.
Okay. If I talk from here, can you hear me? Yes. And I'm being picked up? Okay, great. I'm so grateful to be reading here at Tree, and so grateful to the organizers and to everyone for coming, and so happy to be reading with Stuart. So thank you. And so happy my cousin Alex is here in the audience. I will read from my first book, solely, because I have not written anything in the past year and a half that I would dare to read in front of people. It's all been really bad. The first poem I'll read is called Babysitters. Babysitters. Your mother was as nubile as a dressmaker's dummy. Your father polished his glasses and rubbed his crop. When the babysitter arrived with her turquoise belt and raw mouth, your father had never seen such a fine wrist, such a way with an onion. She pinned a plastic hummingbird behind one pink ear. She sang Fever over boiling eggs. You, at 9, sculpted your curls with toothpaste. You hated your friends, their Lego sets and down jackets. But this babysitter, she'd start with Goldilocks, then veer. Papa Bear said, someone has been eating my porridge. And Goldilocks said, my life is broken, my heart is over. Snap my neck like a broccoli stalk. Hear the babysitter brisk and newsy to the milkman. You catch words like cream, coffee, cows. Phrases like, my sister in Florida, 8 pounds, 10 ounces, a head of black down. But when she thinks herself alone, you hear backseat of the car, then with a trench knife in the orchard. Secrets thud like June bugs against screens, and all you have to do is let them in. The next one I will read is called Rehearsal. I'm going to be neurotically checking the time throughout my reading.
It's only been 2 minutes.
Okay. I always stretch it mentally to like 25 minutes, and I've just been torturing everyone. Okay. Rehearsal. I am walking through water with one of my sisters. The river banked with tiger lilies, the sun like having a lemon juiced into your eye, our senile dog ecstatic behind us, and I am yammering about my discovery. A chest-deep pool sentried by trees that caterpillars were killing with their yearly carnival tents. We reach, then ruin the pool with oils and shampoos. We scrub too much skin from our heels, then debate whether to sunbathe naked. That is, who is hiding in the woods. We joke so long and rough, the joke morphs, till we're practicing for our future rapes. We both have numbers that we know are up. My sister's ears are speared with porcupine quills and steel, but she's placed her straw hat carefully over her stomach. As she talks, I watch while dragonflies and other less showy insects land on her burning shoulders. The dragonflies present their stenciled wings. I can't remember what the others do. My sister spits to clean each sunglass mirror. She wants me to hear how, when it happens, she'll do this scream. But when the scream comes, it's just like she's opened a shaken bottle of sparkling water. I am speechless only for the view of her throat's cushioned corridor. But when the scream ends, her eyes have broken off from the rest of her face. She takes our green net bag full of oranges and slams it down on the baking rocks, beating the ground till the oranges soften and streak the air with the smell of their breaking. The next one I will read is called Romance. And the first line is sort of inspired by a poem that probably many of you know by Rimbaud. The English title for that poem would be Romance 2, approximately. Romance. Everyone's a serious 17. And so one night we married in the woods, though having to make curfew spoiled the mood. You wore, of course, a kind of smock. I was bright as a jester in meters of daffodil gauze, my metals dyeing my skin. We had, we knew, it all. The chalices, the incense, the lover's tarot deck, and nearby the baptizing rush of river. The air tonight smells like the mulch of primeval concupiscence, I cried, and what could you do but agree? Ants traveled patiently under our raiment, the sex was athletic and wise. And then we touched foreheads with a new strain of sorrowful dignity. For although we were rural, we were never deep enough in to mistake the humming of wires overhead. This is called Red Cloth. I went to this party. I stared at a man in orange glasses. And then there was nothing to do except follow his red cloth shoes to the beach. I buried the base of my glass and watched as, naked, he staggered too close to the waves. I sat in the sand and counted my bracelets. The man in orange glasses said, "Cape Breton's so green, like living inside a salad." Then he fell backwards, trying to trace a castle in the stars. I am not sure why I'm convinced that expressing contempt is my life's work. And I should have been back at that party, building my own complex salad, using unimpeachably local mushrooms grown on my body, not here, watching these waves throw the same length of chain at the shore. And why do I crave not the shaved and lotioned surface of his or any body, but only the tangy, throbbing interior? Wet wheels spinning, wet looms weaving, one red tissue after another torn by my reach. This is called the sword dance. There were so many things I hated at 7. Group activities, talking, children younger than me. And how Megan, my dance teacher, loved the other kid despite his sloppiness. Drooling, tripping, kicking the meter sticks, we crossed in an X to practice the sword dance, which used to be done only after the enemy died. And I watched Megan's throat spend the whole hour heating the metal necklace she wore. I smiled as hard as I had been taught, though I couldn't stand seeing her satiny arms around that dirty eater, his nose so close to the strawberry birthmark on her cheek that she touched whether happy or sad. Each night I lay in bed, punching my stomach, hoping this practice might make it so that next time Megan and I would be alone. But every week there he was, rat-tailed and panting. And every week I tied my black leather laces so tight up my calves the X's remain. I wanted to jump so high that I'd spend an hour at least only falling and hit every planet on my way to the concrete floor. I wanted to see him walked up the basement stairs, through the warm, plaid-papered kitchen, given an apple and maybe his shoes, coaxed through the sliding glass doors to the porch, then dragged to the woodshed and strangled. This is called I Understood Our Time Was Running Out. I understood our time was running out, so I planned a winter picnic and privately decided not to eat. We drove past petrified trees, and thankfully we passed a cyclist with prayer cards woven through his spokes. So he provided talk until we reached the cove. You spread a collapsed cardboard box over seagrass blown the wrong way, while I unpacked my obvious fruits and vegetables: pomegranate, artichoke heart, cherry. Some people bag the first head they see. I had chosen lettuce as carefully as a ball gown comparing ruffles. But soon we were noting a summer A-frame, nodding our emptying heads. And as if at a chess game, we stared at the square foot between us. Soon I'd try on your glasses, you'd play with my lighter. A few feet away, foam came off the water and dolloped the rocks, and a plastic doll torso was 8 waves away from arriving, armless, legless, sucked and beaten clean. Okay, this one is called May. 2 days before the wedding, the fields whiten with circus tents. Some of us are sent to the barn to tear apart chickens, chatting and stacking their livers and hearts. Others collect stray children and run them in circles till they're exhausted. When the bride paces, we nestle her into corners, work ointment into her hands. One day before the wedding, she tracks us to the river. Since it is May, the water's silvered with Gaspereau, and she watches as we sieve them up to spasm on the dock, gulping splintered air, rubbing off their spangled skins. This is called There Was Nothing Left to Drink. There was nothing left to drink, and so we floated, fortified and aimless, away from the party, down the emptying highway, and you put your hand in your pocket, then mine, while we batted through Queen Anne's Lace to the water, where you unknotted the rubber dinghy we found there, and we both paused to see if it would puncture when you placed your stiletto inside our inflatable boat. This next one is called Mary Ellen's Spook, and it requires a very brief introduction, which is just that I grew up in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, which is a very small town. And outside of Antigonish, in a place called Caledonia, there's this old farm property. And supposedly, I believe it, but nobody else is obliged to. In the early 20th century, there was a farming couple that lived on this piece of property, and they adopted a young woman named Mary Ellen. And in 1922, strange things began to happen. Mary Ellen, though, lived until she was about 60-something. That's actually totally extraneous information, but Mary Ellen Spook. As a teenager, there are several ways to get your parents' attention. Only one of these ways is to set things on fire with your mind. But Mary Ellen was unaware of the alternatives. Had it not been 1922, had she been born yesterday, she could have banged out a career like Sylvia Browne. Book jackets bright as tinfoil, rosy quartz, incantatory moaning set to djembes. Had it not been Nova Scotia, she could have joined a circus, called herself Isis, read hibiscus, cut a fringe, fucked a few dogs when the seekers slowed their seeking. But what she lacked was access. No books, no newspaper even. The closest thing to freakish, the francophone farmhand with his black cigarettes and black coffee. She didn't mean to braid the horses' manes and tails hundreds of times with so much elan, French for stranded, but up was the only unoccupied direction, so how else to get there? And always these questions: who set those fires, who broke those mirrors, is that your blood? One morning, the china cabinet doors flew open of their own accord, and teacups floated out in a straight line, doing a little turn at the end of their journey, like runway models. This time, Mary Ellen hadn't even been there, throwing her big, wet mind around. Instead, she'd been standing at the edge of the property, where the plow always turned back. Her neck was bent like a medieval mandolin. When the priests and parents approached, already bloody from pushing through blackberry thorns, their faces were no longer the human faces she had known. So she lay down before them carefully, as if upon dozens of glass balls, and when someone made the first cut, she said only, "Mother, I am afraid." I should have mentioned that the last line in that poem, "Mother, I am afraid," again, this might not be necessary information, but that was supposedly the last sentence spoken by this German woman named Anneliese Michel, who was supposedly possessed by demons in the 70s. She died in 1976 after undergoing, I think, 67 exorcism sessions. My soul and I, we were sensitive. My soul and I, we were sensitive, and our project was to process unrequited love. So we pitched a tent near the ocean at night in a field of chilled violets and lavender. My soul nicknamed me Radical Embodiment. Together we scrambled down cliffs to the inlet, grabbing the same handfuls of poison oak. Then we'd wade into the water, smoking, and later we built a fire and did pagan twirls around it. Doing this, I cringed. Yet my soul pretended violent indifference, just folding its useless wings lest they be singed. I'm discovering, because apparently I had forgotten, that a lot of my poem titles are also just the first lines of poems, as is the case with this one. My sister and I, we know we are filth. My sister and I, we know we are filth, and so we proceed with great caution when we enter the world that was saved for us. Unlocking our mother's door, prying open her chest, plunging our hands in the powder and silk. We know we could be in her bedroom for years, and yet we forgot to pack meat for our journey. Orchids and lilies pattern her walls. When we tire of smelling our own bodies, we spray her perfume in the air, and it rises in a sparkling font, lingers, then falls. Now I rip a velvet headband with my teeth. I spit the sequins at my sister. Now she is using our mother's tweezers to pluck black hairs from beneath her navel, while I turn my face to the vaulted ceiling and hold my breath till the sparks come. We know we are in this up to our waists, but still we're ashamed to want what we cannot name. My sister's trailing her tongue across our mother's mirror, and I am imagining this unnameable something passing swiftly out of her, as I want it passing swiftly out of me. But we both know the dark will come on, like someone pushing their thumbs into our eyes. Our mother will find us here and stride towards us, arms and coat open to show she means no harm. Playing Lesbians. In my dreams, I am a moral child, and once I tire of performing my idiosyncrasies, my babysitter and I are somewhere still sinking into a dimpled couch under a misremembered painting, playing lesbians. There was what I was, and then there was what I seemed to be becoming. I love this gory business, I kept thinking, as I watched with the eye that wasn't pressed into the couch, the wind shunt one of her hairs over the hardwood floor, and heard a sudden rain begin, silvery and short, barely enough to wet an umbrella. Some omissions are so extravagant they become adornment. With August over and linden trees no longer buzzing emporiums, in front of my parents she licked an eyelash off my cheek, for scrapbooking, for luck. And we all made sounds that groped towards laughter. I watched her pull on her scalloped shoes, each heel so high her steps like needlepoint. Bright dust beneath each brow's cathedral arch, my face swept for a second by one of her thousands of polished rococo ringlets as, For, and since it was my birthday, she fastened gold chains to my ankles and wrists. I will read one more. It's been 21 minutes. And I will just end with the last poem in my book, with such gratitude to all of you for coming and listening. The last time I slept in this bed, I was involved in the serious business of ripping apart my own body. I'd run my fingers over it, seeking but never finding the right point of entry, so having to tear one myself. Though midway through, I'd always tire and let night enter like a silver needle, sewing my eyelids shut. This was not an original practice, but thinking for a time that it was, felt like being able to choose when spring would arrive, engineering an April that opened like a parasol, even in thoroughest winter. Thank you so much.